Well, the WCC may still be dominated by the Gonzaga Bulldogs, but the level of recruiting around the conference has improved quite a bit in the past couple of years. Here to break down some recruiting classes for two of Gonzaga's conference foes is recruiting analyst Jason Jordan of Sports Illustrated right here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Don't go away.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. I'd also like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, thrilled again to be joined by Jason Jordan of Sports Illustrated. Jason and I talked a lot about Gonzaga's non-conference opponents and some of the incoming freshmen that are going to be on those squads for Alabama and Michigan State and Baylor and Texas and Kentucky and all those excellent teams that Gonzaga is playing outside of the conference schedule. But there are a couple programs within the WCC who brought in some high-level talent as well. Jason, I want to start by talking about Gonzaga's real nemesis in the WCC. That is, of course, the Gaels of St. Mary's. Certainly BYU has been a rival in the past, but it's always been about Randy Bennett and St. Mary's. Kind of a unique program, and they kind of have to recruit unique style players. They got themselves a pair of pretty good ones, Aidan Mahaney and Joshua Jefferson coming in for the class of 2022. Can you talk to me a little bit about what those guys bring to the table?
I've only seen Aidan. I've seen him at a couple different tournaments over the last during his senior year run, but I've always left there. I'm being very impressed with him because I always take it like this: like I wasn't watching him specifically, but I left there remembering him. If that makes you know what I'm saying. So that's always something I use as a measuring stick sometimes when I'm not familiar with the recruit that I'm. At a tournament that I'm at. And so he was always a guy that caught my eye just because he plays very confidently, plays, obviously he's a 3-level scorer and he's really, really shifty, right? So he's going to create a lot of separation and get his 3-point shot off, which is very efficient because he scores at all 3 levels. But because you have to respect his 3-point shot, you push up on him and he's going by you because I think that's the best part of his game. And you really play into his hand when defenders do it all the time that I've seen him. They always want to press up on him because they think they can rattle him, but he'll hit him with a crossover and they'll be like, oh, good, great. And then he'll like step back. He's like, I don't want to say the name Steph Curry, but he's shifty like that. Not Steph Curry, but he's shifty like that. Like, so you can't play him up like that. And then he has a really keen eye, great vision, great facilitator. So really high IQ guy. He'll probably have a curve from a strength standpoint. I think he's really thin. He's always been, I haven't even over the course of a year, I thought he was even thinner when I saw him. Like most guys pick up weight. I didn't see him but I mean, he's having a lot of success this summer. So I think he's going to be a guy that obviously he's going to step in and contribute right away. So, that's a big get for them. Then Josh Jefferson's a big body. I was very, very impressed with him during his senior year because I got on to Liberty because they were in our Power 25 that we do at SB Live. And so they were the guys that knocked off the powerhouse Bishop Gorman. And he was an intricate part of that, average 17 and 10 in his senior year. Just a big body. I think he's around 235, 240, around about 6'8", 6'9". Another high IQ guy who does a lot, from the high post. So he operates from the high post. You can run the offense through him. Really smart, makes the right play at all times. Can definitely score in the low post, but I think he thrives as a facilitator and a guy who's a playmaker for himself and his teammates. So 2 big gets, guys that you guys are not going to like over the next couple of years for sure. especially Aidan, because he plays real confident, and that tends to rub fans the wrong way.
Oh man, St. Mary's has had a litany of frustrating guards dating back to Matthew Dellavedova, Patty Mills, plenty of guys in between then.
Yeah, he took me back. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to kind of to stay on St. Mary's a little bit. We've talked in the past about Gonzaga's the high pace that they play and kind of how the offense, the free flowing offense, getting out in transition a lot is very appealing to prospects. Well, you look at St. Mary's and they do things a little bit differently. Their offense is much more structured. They, like to use 25 to 28 seconds of the shot clock pretty much every time. And certainly it works for them. They win a lot of games. They beat Gonzaga more than just about anybody in the country does. So clearly it's a recipe for success in a lot of ways. But I wonder, if you look at Coach Bennett out on the recruiting trail, how picky they may have to be to find guys who fit their system, and how challenging it might be to convince a guy to come to a team where they average 58 points per game, as opposed to, a Gonzaga or an Arizona or some of those other high level West Coast programs that do a lot more scoring.
Yeah. Tony Bennett has the same problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but, at the end of the day, they're not coming for Chet Holmgren. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not putting a whole lot of resources into trying to get 5-star, and even honestly, high level 4-star guys. They go after system guys because Josh and Aidan are definitely system, especially Josh. Aidan can kind of freelance a little bit, but Josh is a system guy. Like he needs structure, and I think they go after guys that are aware of that, and they sell them on the fact that, hey, you had all this success in your system, but it's because you're talented, but the system is going to help you reach your goals, and that's the sell. You know what I'm saying? You can sell that to a mid-level 4-star guy, 3-star guy. You can sell that, but high level 4 who thinks they should be a 5, they're like, get out of here. Exactly. I'm going to the league, one and done, baby. So they're not going after those guys. They're not coming for Keontae George, MJ Rice, Nick Smith. They never get no mail from them. No, because it's a waste of time. But a system guy would, obviously thrive in that system, and then they're like, hey, you can have all the TV time you want, but we'll see you in March.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a selling point too.
Yeah. Wanted to talk about another team in the WCC, team that we don't talk about a lot in terms of how competitive they are, but they do have a lot of high-level recruiting. They have a really, really good freshman class last year. That's the Pepperdine Waves. They had Houston Millette, Maxwell Lewis. Really, really good young core for Lorenzo Romar. We know that he has always been somebody worth keeping an eye on the recruiting trail, even if it hasn't always translated on the court. They just added a nice forward in Javon Porter out of the class of 2022. They also added a big man transfer from USC, Boubacar Coulibaly. Was wondering if you had any thoughts on those guys and kind of what they're bringing to the table over in Pepperdine.
Yeah, well, Boubacar is kind of like a warrior, right? He's raw offensively, but he's a warrior on the defensive end. That's where he's gonna make his money. Just cleaning things up. He's got good hands, but you're not going to give him the ball, and he's not going to do the Hakeem Olajuwon. Like he's not He's not that. But he's a good piece defensively for sure. Got definitely a defensive presence, and he's a great rebounder in his space. Like he's somewhat agile, but definitely a project on the offensive end. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't throw him the ball. They are some of those guys. He's not one of them. Like he can finish plays, and he thrives on putbacks, and he's very active down there. But I really like Javon too. 6'10", very versatile, active rebounder. He's great off that second jump. He's the first putback, the second putback, he's great there. Defensive presence for sure, because he's really long at 6'10". I think his wingspan is like 7'3". Wow, which is crazy. But he can score in the low post, and then he's inside out. Like you have to respect the perimeter jump shot because he's knocking that down. So he's definitely going to be a guy who Romar's going to be able to use immediately. Immediately. I expect him to have a big impact this year.
All right, Jason and I are going to come back in the second segment. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk more broadly about just how we evaluate head coaches as recruiters and kind of what goes into determining whether a coach is a good recruiter or not. But before we do that, I want to tell you all about Underdog Fantasy. Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up college basketball season. Underdog Fantasy is easy to play, and you can win cold, hard cash in just one single game. Underdog has investment backing from Mark Cuban, Kevin Durant, Adam Schefter, and more, and they have always been focused on building superior products for a fun user experience. And let me tell you, using Underdog Fantasy is easy, and most importantly, it's fun. So sign up today and use promo code LOCKEDON, and Underdog will double your first deposit of up to $100. So deposit $100 today and get $100 free at UnderdogFantasy.com. That's UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code LOCKEDON to get in on the action today. All right, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still locked on Zags, still chatting here with the great Jason Jordan of Sports Illustrated. Jason, I kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit. Recently, the Field of 68 did a ranking of the top 20 head coach recruiters in all of college basketball. It caused some controversy, which, you know what, when you're making college basketball content in August and September, it's okay to cause a little bit of controversy, gets some conversation going. But it kind of made me think about, how do we judge particularly head coaches? Because they're not always the ones doing a lot of the recruiting. Like Tommy Lloyd was on this list. Mark Few was not on this list. That was part of what caused the controversy in Spokane, at least. But, you know, Tommy did a lot of the recruiting for Mark Few. So certainly there's maybe an argument there, but I'm curious for you, like, just before we get into any of the nitty gritty, when you are thinking about head coaches as recruiters, what are the things that stand out to you, the qualities that stand out that make a good head coach recruiter?
Well, number one, to your point, when Tommy would bring the guys in, you know, Tommy's the guy who would make the connections and stuff like that. So that's kind of more of a associate head coach, top assistant role. But for me, as a head coach, are you a closer?
You're
like,
right.
I got coach. I set it up, and I threw you the lob, coach. I need you to dunk. You know, I tell you who was masterful at that. I mean, and he's a legend. You know, he's a legend. But Mike Krzyzewski was legendary.
Yeah,
like I have so many stories from recruits talking about that didn't even go there, but they were like, "Yeah, I was just going to Duke for the visit." Like, but I was about to commit. When he talked, like he talked. I mean, guys that went to Carolina, you know what I'm saying? We're like, oh, I'll give you one. Gigi Jackson, told me when he heard Coach K speaking, he literally said his hands were shaking. I said, like literally shaking. He was like, yo, I looked at them and they were shaking, right? So when you know how I gauge it is your ability to close, right? Because at the end of the day, they serve them up for you, and you gotta come on, man. You gotta knock this thing out the park, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to be what helps you close. You got to be relatable.
Yep.
You know, you have to find common ground with these guys, and you have to be able to speak to what they deem to be important, but as it falls within your system, you know. And then so you have to be a great salesman. We talk about Randy Bennett selling the system. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to sell me, hey coach. You know, because mom's over here with the paper, like.
Right.
I see that. Look, my son's a scorer. Like, don't look like that's what you do. You know, so how let me, coach, talk to me. Yeah. And then so he's got to be like, you know, that we haven't done that in the past. That was because of the personnel. You know, with your kid, we were at 58 there. We're gonna definitely be above 72 a game. You know, we bring your kid in because look at what he does here and there and everywhere, and you know. So I'm sure there was. I mean, I say Aidan's a system guy, but he's also a scorer, right? He looks for that shot. So you know, there was obviously some selling in that regard, you know. And then connections, I would say most head coaches have decent connections, but a lot of them rely heavily, and I do mean heavily, on the connections of their assistants, you know, and even on down to the D-ops. I mean, you know, that's why a lot of D-ops guys get those jobs. Because of connections. I mean, it's you know, that's life. You know, it's an old cliche. Like, it's all about relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I know so many kids that go. I'll give you an example. Levelle Morton is at North Carolina Central, right? That's an HBCU, right? They're not getting 5 stars. They're not getting. He's not. You know, he's not out of his mind about that. Like, he understands it. He gets it. But everybody loves Levelle Morton. Everybody, if you follow him on Twitter, he's like a brand within himself. So he gets, you know, 5-star interest. John Wall came on a visit there.
Right.
He calls him Unc. That's a relationship. John doesn't want to go to Central.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like Rodney Purvis, I don't know, I'm taking you back, but Rodney Purvis was a McDonald's All-American. He was going to go. MJ Rice was looking at who's at Kansas now as a freshman. Look at all because of this brand that is Levelle Morton, because he has relationships. I mean, Lavelle's connected to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. I'm shocked that he's still at North Carolina Central.
Yeah, I bet.
He's due for a bigger job. No shade to Central, but he's got connections, great connections. And so I think those things, just the ability to sell, the ability to close, and then your connections, those three would be the key ones that I would say would be the mark for a big recruiter, an amazing recruiter.
So kind of building on that a little bit, I wonder how much when you're evaluating head coach recruiters, or when other people are doing it, like how much you look at how well they recruit compared to like the size of their school or the conference that they play in, or those kind of things. Because like you can look at somebody like John Shire, who I believe confidently is a good recruiter, but like how much is he benefiting on like, I'm recruiting at Duke, I have this built-in system, or even somebody like Tommy, who I'm very confident is a good recruiter, but he got to start at Arizona. Like that's a pretty big advantage versus, somebody at NC Central or some of these like recruiters who are probably very good, but are recruiting at much lower level schools. How much does that factor in?
Oh, big time. I mean, I'll give you a great example. Nolan Smith is at Louisville now, still a big, easily you can recruit it, but it's easier to recruit at Duke than it is at Louisville. That's just a fact, right? Yeah. So Nolan is a star. Everyone considers Nolan to be one of the best recruiters in college basketball, but it was based off what he did at Duke. Right. Well, now you're realizing that Duke was helping. Now, no, don't get it twisted. Nolan is going to get a 5-star on campus every week at Louisville. That's a fact. Yeah. But, it's an easier sell if it's Duke. Duke's a brand. I mean, just like Gonzaga is a brand. I mean, it's like, I'll tell you, Kay used to, this was Kay's sales point. Yeah. He would say this, like, if you come here, we're going to win a national title. If you don't come here, we're going to win a national title. Right. I mean, talk about the brand selling itself. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I definitely would weigh it heavier. Yeah. For a guy at a smaller school that is, reeling them in. Yeah. That because to my point, that makes you an amazing salesperson. Right. Because if I can lure you to St. Mary's and not Gonzaga, I'm better than you. Yeah, absolutely. You know what I'm saying? How about and I know it's kind of hard to separate these things because how you do on the court is not necessarily related to how you recruit, but obviously there's at least some parallel. And I'm thinking, and I don't mean to drag this guy, but I'm thinking of the Oregon Ducks. I'm thinking of Dana Altman a little bit and they have some benefits with a relationship with Nike and all of that. And they've gotten a lot of 5-star talent. I don't think there's a person out there that would debate that Dana Altman is very good at recruiting, but the production on the court hasn't really been there. And a lot of these guys, these 5-star guys, 4-star guys, whether they've had injuries or they just haven't performed as well, or even if they did play well, the team kind of never really followed them. Do you consider that, or you're like, you know what, we're just talking recruiting. It's not something that, and then at the kind of on the same coin, like, eventually, at some point, that has to impact your recruiting. If guys are like, look, your last 3 5-star guys, are barely in the league anymore. Like, what's going on, Yeah. It's definitely a fact. I used to would say recruits don't care, but I don't know that that's true anymore because it's all about exposure. Yeah. And people want to be associated with, winning. Right. And they want to play in March. They want to know that they're going to play in March. They want to know that they have a decent chance to get to at least that second weekend, potentially get 3 to 4 games in March because, it's about marketing in March. I mean, there is no greater marketing month. You know what I'm saying? So, absolutely, that factors in. And if you think that, to the point about selling, if you think other schools aren't using that, against them, it's like, okay, go there, but go there and then watch me play in March. You have a really good seat in your dorm. Yeah, so that's definitely a factor and a big factor, more so than it used to be, I would say. Makes sense. Kind of the last point on that, as sort of flipping it a little bit. We've seen this with Gonzaga a lot, and certainly other programs have done this as well, where they consistently get guys who
who are maybe not top 100 guys or like maybe low 3-star prospects or mid-level 3-star prospects, and they're turning them into NBA lottery picks. Like Corey Kispert was not a top 100 prospect. He was a lottery pick. Rui Hachimura, I know international recruiting is a little bit different, but regardless, was not expected to be a top 10 pick by the time his college career was up, and yet he was. Going back to the Randy Bennett example, Tommy Kusi was a walk-on at St. Mary's and ended up being he's got an Exhibit 10 contract right now and was a phenomenal college basketball player. Like, that's not recruiting, but how much do you think that plays an impact? And even for like Gonzaga, like they did recruit Corey Kispert, and so how much of that is like, do you think they got a little lucky? Is it just player development, or do they have eyes that are really seeing some kind of unlocking some things that maybe some other programs aren't seeing?
Yeah, and that was another one. I'm glad you brought. It's amazing. It's a great point. To have that eye to see the kid that's bubbling, but hasn't he hasn't blown up yet. So it's kind of like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't go play it anymore. He might be up top, so he's the one, right? So to have that, and that kid happens every year, right? DJ Power, right? So that's the name that comes to mind off that. But definitely that absolutely factors in, and it's a great selling point too, right? To say, look what we did for this kid. While he was here in 3 or 4 years, you could be him, and because the reality is, you need to be able to. That's part of the sale, the development, right? So the only people that doesn't work for it, I would gauge it at around the top 12 to 15.
Sure.
So you're not going to really sell Chet Holmgren on, if you come here, we're going to develop you because you're a little raw, Chet. You know what I mean? Am I? I do everything. What are you talking about?
Right.
Paula, I mean, you can handle the ball, but we can teach you to be better. No, you can teach me to play harder, right? Right. So you're not going to really sell that on the 12 to 15, even if you should be able to around that 11 to 15 mark, even if it's true, that's like, dude, you could use some work. They don't believe you, right? So they don't care what they say, they're lying. 15 and down, they think they're one and done. They have a real legitimate shot, whether it's true or not, at the number 1 pick. They're going to shake Adam Silver's hand first. So, but that's only 15 people if we're talking numbers. So you got 16 and back to say, man, we can develop you. And so, we're playing the percentage game. That had better be a major part of your sales pitch, because then you can also call in the Kispert and say, hey, tell him. Tell him just wait right here. Let me get him on face. Tell him. And they do that all the time. The time. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times they'll come there and say, oh man, I really like what you did with Kispert. Like, oh, did you say Kispert? Let me get him on the phone. I know I know a lot of schools, I won't even start naming them, but they always on the visit, they get their NBA players on that phone. Yeah.
Well, and I think about Gonzaga too. I mean, how many teams in the country had 2 5-star guards on the bench last year who both stayed? Like, I don't think that's happening in a lot of places. And you got to think Corey Kispert and Andrew Nembhard and, insert any other guys who have done that at Gonzaga had to play a role there, because I would, Hunter Salas and Nolan Hickman, if they'd started their careers in another program, I'm not sure they'd still be there.
I can't. It's so funny. I don't know if you've been talking to the coaches, but they've definitely said that to somebody. I can't remember if it was Caden. Because they told me, or Wesley. I've heard that this summer. They said, have exactly what you just said. That was, to your point, that's a sale. And it's real. It's like, hey, I'm not lying. They here. There they go right there. And they came off the bench and they're here. Because you know what? They know what's coming. They know how we're going to develop them. And that would sell me as a dad. Certainly would sell me as a recruit.
Yeah, absolutely. Hunter Salas participated in the Formula Zero camp with Damian Lillard, and Caden Cooper was there. And I'm like, this had to be helpful 100%. To have that conversation of like, hey, look, I was a top 10 recruit. I didn't become a one and done, but I'm here, I'm ready. And like, Hunter's going to explode in year 2. And if he does, like, you got to think that's going to help a lot with some of those kids who are thinking about that.
100%. Yeah. Definitely.
All right, Jason, last question before I let you go. The NCAA finally made some movement, did something with regards to the transfer portal. We've talked a handful of times on the show about how chaotic it has been in year 1. And we've seen this 60-day transfer portal window come out for basketball. It's going to be starting on the Monday after Selection Sunday, as if We need more madness in March. It's going to be a crazy, crazy time with all these kids kind of entering the transfer portal and having this amount of time to do it. I'm curious, we've talked a little bit about what the transfer portal is doing to like junior college kids and international recruiting and some of the impacts it's had. Do you see this as a positive thing, or at least just a good sign that the NCAA is paying some attention and is doing something here, or kind of thoughts on this action?
Well, we're going to give them a little credit for doing something, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't see how 15 more days is going to help.
Yeah.
Drop this inordinate number.
Yeah.
I like I've said in the past up here, it's gonna get the number. I'm looking at 2,000.
Yeah.
I'm looking at 2,000. That's my mark.
Yeah.
You give him 2 more weeks. Sheesh. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how extending it helps. Maybe they think they'll think it through a little more and realize they don't need it. Maybe that's the logic. Other than that, I don't know. I don't think this helps. Just gonna be all the way honest. Sorry, NCAA. I don't think it helps. You got to help me out with how that helps.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, trying to time it with the NBA draft seems like something that should be a priority. And as I understand it here, it's not really helping with that. No. But like we talked on the show about Gonzaga, and they were very fortunate to land Efton Reed, who I think is going to be an impactful player for them. But they were struggling to get bigs because they didn't know what was going to happen with Drew Timme. And it doesn't seem like, again, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see how this change really impacts that. And to me, with more players potentially making a decision to stay in college because of NIL opportunities, because the NBA doesn't like those the bigs like Drew Timme and Oscar Tshiebwe and Armando Bacot and those guys. Like, more of those guys are going to stay. And if that's happening and these kids can't transfer because they don't know, like, that just seems like a problem to me. And I wish they would have addressed that, and it feels like they didn't.
They didn't. And I'll tell you, I feel like we're going to have, I did a big story this spring, or probably actually it was summer, on Josiah Jeffers, who's at Radford, which probably nobody knows, right? And no shade to Josiah, but he understands. Sure. I mean, he's at Radford, you know what I'm saying? And it was really like a cautionary tale about the transfer portal and how guys think the grass is greener, and you get out there and it's like, oh, I thought all the offers were coming. Wait, they're not coming? So no calls today? 3 weeks later, no calls? Oh, God. Now I got to go back to my school where I was on scholarship. Oh, no, my coach left? What? Now I got to go beg this new coach to let me come. And the new coach says, and you can pay for it.
Whoa,
So he went from scholarship to getting a job. To paying for college and working his way. And it worked out for him because he got back on the team. It really humbled him. And, in the end, things work out the way they're supposed to work out. But they don't have to go that way. And I think with more time, you're going to have more guys saying, you know what, I think I could pick up some offers. And these guys didn't get the guy they wanted, so they probably are waiting for me. And I'm telling you, it sounds crazy, but these kids really think like that because nobody's honest. Nobody's honest. Like, nobody's realistic about their projection. I don't know why people don't understand that there is a certain amount of NBA players. There's only been a few thousand that have ever played in the NBA. I don't know. We've all heard these things, and it doesn't stick. So more time, I don't believe, is a good thing. One instance where more time is not a good thing.
Sure.
I don't see it.
Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show once again. Always appreciated to have your expertise, your insights. Looking forward to more opportunities as we hopefully start to see a little bit more action with Gonzaga's recruiting in the coming weeks. But again, always appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Coming on the show. That is going to do it for me today. We got another fun guest coming up later this week. We're also going to continue our NBA season preview series as well. Check out the website, scorezagscore.com, for more written content all about Gonzaga. And of course, check out the shows coming later this week right here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Available wherever you get your podcasts, available on YouTube as well. Go hit that big orange subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the start of the college basketball season. We are very close, but if you are listening and haven't done so yet, just go hit that subscribe button. It is much appreciated. Finally, thank you again to all of you who have made Locked On Zags your first listen of the day. Locked On WCC doesn't exist yet, but you can get more informed on the West Coast happenings by making Locked On Pac-12 your second listen of the day. Host Spencer McLaughlin and the local experts of Locked On take you across the Pac-12 in 30 minutes, 5 times per week. All right, thank you all for listening, and go Zags.